Arnhem Bridge. This is a topic that has been covered in several games already. The topic is this famous battle of World War II that was part of Operation Market Garden, of this attempt of the Allies to take control of several bridges in Holland. And now we have a new game on this topic. This is a game published by Victory Point Games, designed by Paul Koenig, and it is the first installment in a trilogy that will cover 3 of the bridges of Operation Market Garden. This is a 2-player game. It also plays well solo, by the way, and it is at the introductory level. So, a small map, very simple linear rules, not too many counters to deal with. Well, this is the general idea. Let's see how the game plays. The map is printed on cardstock, looks pretty neat. The city of Arnhem is in the middle of the map, and it is the main feature on the map. Here you have the bridge. Only 4 units start the game on the board. And those are all German units. 1 is an independent unit, and the other 3 units are commanded by specific headquarters. This is a chit pool game. The players will draw headquarter chits from a cup, and that will indicate the group of units that activates. The ally player starts with no units on the map, but he has 2 groups of units that will enter the map during turn 1 when their headquarters is drawn. Those units will enter the board through one of these 4 road points. Actually, all allied reinforcements will enter from those road points during the game, and then there are other reinforcements scheduled to enter the game later. There is a single German unit that will enter the game in turn 2, will enter from that hex there, and as it enters it will start running in this direction and try to exit the map from the southern edge. Because if the ally player manages to stop that unit, to prevent it from exiting the map from this area, then the ally player is going to score a huge amount of points. So trying to stop that unit, or for the German player trying to get that unit safely out of the board, is going to be a major element in the game. Both players will have to build at least part of their strategy around, well, the fate of that unit. And then there are other reinforcements scheduled to enter. There are German reinforcements in turn 3 and in turn 7, and those are both night turns. That means that those units are going to have their movement allowance halved for the turn in which they enter the game. And then there are allied units that will enter the game in turn 6. However, these units will have to go through a little bit of an ordeal. Before you can add them to the board, you have to roll on a table to simulate the damage that they may have received during the fight that they have to go through as they are reaching the area represented on the board. That means that some of those units may reach the board in pristine condition and full combat strength, but some of the units may reach the board already reduced, and some units may not be able to reach the board at all. A unit that is activated by a headquarter can move up to its full movement allowance. Movement allowance is the number printed on the right, and that of course is modified by terrain. For example, this unit would move 1, 2 movement points, 3, 4, 5. The extra one here is because of the slope, and that unit moved using its full movement allowance, and that's it, could not do anything else. Or a unit could choose not to move and to use its full combat strength to fire against an adjacent enemy. In this case, for example, that unit doesn't move and could fire using a combat strength of 7. The combat strength is the number printed on the left. Or during a turn, a unit could choose to move up to half of its movement allowance and to attack with half of its combat strength. And this can be done in any order. A unit could first move and then attack, or first attack and then move. There's also another type of attack, which is close combat. A unit can spend 2 movement points to enter the same space where an enemy unit is, and in that case you have close combat, and I'll explain later how that works. Other things that affect movement, stacking limits. There is a stacking limit of 2 units per hex, and that applies at all times. And that also means that if two enemy units are stacked in an X, then you cannot close assault them because the stacking limit of 2 applies at all times and applies to both players. Another important thing about movement is that in this game you do not have zones of control. That means that units do not have to stop when they move adjacent to enemy units, and that of course also means that if you leave a hole in your defenses, then the enemies can easily slip through your lines and probably reach areas where you would not want them to be. Each attack will involve one or multiple attacking units going against a defending hex, which may contain one or two defending units. Attacking units can total together their combat factors in a single attack, or they can attack individually. The combat factor of the attack will be modified by the terrain in the axe of the defender. Then also players can play markers. The German player has artillery markers and the ally player has air support markers that can be played to modify the total combat factor of the attack, and the number of support markers that you receive each turn will vary, and that adds a lot of uncertainty and interesting choices and decisions. Once you have the total combat factor of the attack, you roll 1d6. If you rolled less than the total combat factor, then you inflict a hit on the opponent, and you record that by placing this marker under the counter of the opponent, the target unit. The first hit that is inflicted on a unit does not have any particular effect. If that unit receives another hit, then you flip that marker and now the combat strength of the unit is reduced by 1, and if that unit receives a third hit, then that unit is eliminated. If the attacker rolled equal to the combat factor of the attack, then there is an exchange of hits, so both the attacker and the defender will receive a hit. And if the attacker rolls more than the combat factor of the attack, then nothing happens. The attack was a miss. Close combat is very similar to regular combat, but it occurs between two units occupying the same hex. In fact, it is triggered by a unit moving in an hex containing an enemy unit. During close combat, terrain does not apply. Both the attacker and the defender will fire in close combat, but not simultaneously. The defender fires first. If the defender scores a hit on the attacker, then the attacker takes the hit, of course, but also must retreat. If the defender misses, then the attacker gets to attack, and if it hits the opponent, it forces the defender to retreat. If there is an exchange, then both attacker and defender are damaged and they both have to retreat, leaving the original hex vacant. With one interesting exception: if the attacking unit was a fresh unit and there is an exchange, then before the two units retreat, the attacker has the option to take a second hit to hold ground, in which case only the defender must retreat and the attacker can remain in the hex where the close assault took place. So as you can see, close combat is more dangerous than regular fire combat, but still occasionally you may want to use it if you really need to force an enemy out of a certain hex in order to gain a specific position. The game lasts 10 turns. At the end of turn 10, you determine the winner by counting victory points that, as you can see, are assigned for a variety of things, which is always good because it means that there are different possible paths to victory. 2 victory points for each objective city X. Objective city X's are these ones with the red bold edge. A victory point for each town X occupied, victory points for elimination or reduction of enemy units, 5 victory points for occupying both sides of the bridge, and 10 victory points if the German player fails to exit this unit from the map. So now you see how important this unit is. Really, both players are trying to gain a lot of points or prevent the opponent from gaining a lot of points depending on the fate of that unit. Yes, there's going to be a lot of strategy revolving around what happens to this unit. Good introductory designs usually have short and straightforward rules, but they manage to make things interesting thanks to other elements that they are factored in differently, like in the units and the terrain, the reinforcements, things like that. And this is precisely what happens here, because the rules are very accessible. And then as you start playing, all sort of complications arise. Complication not in terms of gameplay mechanics, but in terms of what should I do next, of tough decisions that you will be faced with. For example, the terrain, as you start playing, turns out to be much trickier than it may have seemed at first. You often find yourself short of just one movement point to go where you would like to go, or short of just one combat factor to launch an attack that would make you feel, let's say, comfortable. Then you had this constant temptation to go for the automatic hit, which gives you an immediate payoff, but in the long run may not allow you to inflict enough damage on the opponent, at least not to spread around enough damage. You have other problems, quote-unquote problems, like challenges that are factored in. For example, the reinforcement schedule. There are waves of reinforcements that will come in and will give the upper hand to one side or the other in different phases of the game, keeping both sides on their toes. I like also the fact that there are a lot of variable factors. And the variable factors in this game comprise the cheat pool mechanic, of course, which increases replay value and makes the game solitaire friendly. The variable number of support markers that you receive each turn. The variable condition of the allied reinforcement that sometimes will join the game as a strong effective force. Some of the times they may have been almost exterminated in the battle before they can enter the board. So all these things really bring continuously new and unexpected factors that you have to work around. So as far as introductory games go, I would say that this is a pretty good one. I think this is a smart design that feels tight and challenging. I had a lot of fun playing it, and I would recommend it to both newer gamers and were gamers that like to have the option of a game that plays in under an hour, but it is still fun to play.